prophet Jeremiah, saying, "For I will turn their mourning into joy, and I will comfort them, and I will make them rejoice from their sorrow." Let's pray. God, creator of all, you have made us creatures of this earth, but you've also promised us a share in life eternal. Receive our thanks and praise that through the passion and death of Christ, your child Steve, whom we commend into your hands today, shares with your saints in the joy of heaven, where there is neither sorrow nor pain, but life is everlasting. Amen.
Hello. Some of you may know me, some of you may not. I'm Greg, next door neighbor across the street. I did the ceremony for Steve and Linda back in 2012, so some there. Some of you weren't, so I see some familiar faces and I see some not so familiar faces, but I wish we could be meeting under different circumstances. I'm asked to do this occasionally. Early on in my working career, I was a minister. So, I've done weddings and funerals oftentimes, and a lot of times I don't know the person that I'm speaking for. Today's quite different. In preparing for this, I was looking through some of the things that Heather gave me and that Matt gave me, and it became apparent it's going to be a little more difficult than what I kind of, prepped myself for. You may have to give me a little extra measure of patience occasionally. I was reading through some of the things that Heather gave me from her Facebook posts of friends from the past, students, teachers, and it's quite touching. And that's what I want to share with you. Nothing that I share with you today is going to come as a surprise to any of you. When we lost Steve, many of us, he was so many things to so many different people. Not only in his career did he wear a lot of different hats, but in his personal life. I'm going to be speaking as a friend and a neighbor, but you know him as father, grandfather, husband, dear, dear friend. And those things hit so differently for all of us. And on a personal note, first of all, I want to say I'm very sorry. Steve was a wonderful man. My family and I moved here from Newark into Westerville in October of 04, I believe. My daughter was just going into the 6th grade. Her name's Madison. My son was going into the 1st grade. His name's Chase. She's 31 now. He's 27. What in the world? And I've taken photos of you guys, and you were there at the wedding, and you were just little. You're bigger now. I mean, the passing of time is just incredible. And unfortunately, this is what we're met with sometimes with the passing of time, is that people in our lives come and go. And you learn that early on. When I was a child, my first heartbreak that I remember was losing a dog, losing a pet. It doesn't take long before you start realizing that heartache and loss is just as much a part of life as living itself. And we just have to squint our eyes and lean into it and meet it head on. And hopefully we have family and friends that surround us and support us and are there through each step of the way. And Linda, I want to tell you, that's what we're here for. You look around, we're your people. We're your people. You can't sugarcoat something like this. The next few days, the next few months are going to be very difficult. And we share not the same weight and burden as you do, but we share in that. We've lost someone that we care for and love deeply also. So don't ever hesitate to reach out. Some of us are as close as across the street. Some of us are a 20-minute drive away, but we are all at your disposal and we're here for you. So I just want to share a few things. When I first moved into the neighborhood, as a kid growing up, I grew up in Southern Ohio. And in our neighborhoods, we always have a cast of characters, right? I mean, there's the guy who doesn't want you to walk on his grass. There's the guy who sits on his porch and just watches you walk by, or watches you as you ride your bicycle. And you don't quite know what he's thinking. There was a guy in my neighborhood. He lost part of his nose. And for me, that was a frightening thing to just walk past his house on my way to school. I don't know, it just kind of freaked me out. And then you've got the guys and you've got the families that are friendly and they wave and they ask you how you're doing and they smile. That was Steve and that was Linda. One thing I'm going to miss is Steve's, to me, he was soft-spoken, he was gentle, he was kind, and I never really heard him full-on laugh, but he always had that little chuckle going. You know, he would wave across the street, ask me how I was doing, call me by my name, and then I'd hear that little chuckle. He had a very distinctive voice. To me, he had a very distinctive voice, and he had a very distinctive chuckle. I'm going to miss that. I'm going to miss seeing him and Linda raking every doggone leaf out of the yard, picking up every stick. I mean, you know, my yard looks awful. I don't need any help making my yard look awful. But Steve and Linda, I was always like, doggone it, man, they're out there at it again. And, you know, the bird feeders and the walking the dogs and just seeing the car pull in the driveway and both of them get out. Heather and I were talking about it just 20 minutes ago. You know, the bittersweet thing of sharing your life with someone so deeply and so closely is that one of us is going to say goodbye to the other. And that's going to be a hard thing. I don't know what would have been better. I don't know if it would have been better, you know, for Steve to have been let. That's just such an odd thing to even consider. But one of us has to say goodbye to the other. And I'm sorry that Steve left before you. And if it were the other way around, I would be sorry for Steve that you left first. But, and it's so cliche and it's such a platitude to say sometimes, but those things are out there for a reason. It's better to have loved and lost than to never have loved at all. And that may be cold comfort right now, but would you rather have missed out on Steve's presence in your life, or would you rather have had it and to be grieving it right now? Everyone that we come into contact is not going to be a significant person in our life. They're not going to leave an imprint. You know, some people come and go quickly. We're college roommates, we see them in school, we're work co-workers for a month or two. But some people come into your life and they make a significant difference. And when that person influences you, and when that person is near you, they leave an imprint on your heart and they change you. And that's what Steve has done for most of you on a deep level. For me, you know, it was a little more casual, but I was a better person for having known Steve. I thought the neighborhood was kinder, gentler, brighter, a better place because of his presence. And I guarantee you, everyone else who saw him and came into contact with him thought the same. If he was out in the driveway, if he was out in the yard and you happened to be walking your dog by, you didn't go by unnoticed. He always said hello. He always had a sweet greeting for everybody. I just want to share a couple things before I move on a little bit here. Heather brought something a couple nights ago over to Linda's, and it's a little essay written by a sixth grader some years ago. Little fella's name's Max. We could easily spend an hour here. Linda doesn't want to do that. You know, for her, we want to keep this kind of short and sweet, and I'm going to try my best to do it. But I could just go on and on and on, and I know you could too. But let me share a few things that I think is worth hearing. You know, not just from close friends and family of Steve's, but these are people that he worked with. These are students in his life, and I think it's worth repeating. And I think it's going to be comforting for you to know how others felt about Steve. The legacy that you leave behind, how others view you, how others feel about you, speaks volumes. So this little guy's name was Max. He said, one of my local heroes is Mr. Butler. He's my principal. He's helped out many different Big Walnut schools over the years. I get a kick out of this, but this year he has decided to run Big Walnut Intermediate. He's going to run Big Walnut Intermediate. He can handle any problem at hand at BWI. Since the school had been empty for a year, a lot of work had to be done to get the school ready for the students again, and Mr. Butler was the one who organized all the actions that had to be taken to do so. Also, whenever there was a problem, such as busing, he gets things back on track and running smoothly. Gets things back on track. Yeah, go Steve. He's always very nice to people, and he always has time to help class classrooms out. The year has just started, but it has been going fairly well and will most likely be getting better. He was quoted in the Sunbury News as saying, "There are two things that I want to work on. The first is good manners, being polite, respectful, and thoughtful. And then I want to emphasize the difference between pride and spirit. If more problems occur down the road, I'm confident that they will be fixed." So thank you, Mr. Butler. From a little sixth grade, I didn't bond with my principal like that. I didn't bond with I think most of us, when we look back on our school career, we can say that there was a significant teacher that kind of molded, whether it was a coach or someone who took special interest in you. I know school can be a difficult time too. Some teachers have been teaching too long. They don't need to be there anymore. I had a few of those. Of course, I wasn't a model student, so what goes around comes around. But some teachers are very significant. And it's another cliche, it's another platitude, but teachers make a difference. I wish we lived in a world where teachers were making MBA salaries instead of vice versa. I heard somebody say once, as impressive as it is to watch like a professional athlete do their thing on the field, it's just as impressive to watch a teacher in a classroom of 28 students keep everybody under control and teach them. I mean, that's a talent and that's a skill. I mean, some of us as parents, we have hard enough time controlling one child, right? Or two, let alone a classroom of 25 or 28. So here's a list, I don't know, 3 or 4 pages that Heather gave me. And she said, "You don't need to read all that stuff." And I was like, yeah, I'm not going to. But I am going to go through and highlight stuff. And I found myself highlighting more than I thought I would. That's all the blue here. But I do want to go through here, and I want to see the pattern that's developed here. So just a couple minutes with all these were Facebook posts from your page, people sending condolences. So this is from Heather's childhood friend. She had a couple lines here, but the one that really stands out is she said, "His love for you was inspiring." His love for you was inspiring. What a wonderful man he was. He impacted my family, so he has a legacy to be proud of. I loved seeing your dad around the school and the community. What a great man. He was one of a kind. He will be missed by so many. Steve was one of my favorite people. He did so much for the Big Walnut community. He was amazing. He was an amazing man and leader. This has a couple stories. I don't know who it was from. The lady shares a couple stories. She said, "I was in Meyer one evening, and my son was having a temper tantrum because he couldn't get the prize from the claw machine. Steve talked him right out of his anger and his sadness, saving me a lot of embarrassment." And the same person said, "I found Steve in a Wendy's one time reading an atlas." You all know about this, reading an atlas. And he shared fascinating conversations about places and little facts unknown. So I was talking with Linda about that the other night. I was like, "What's up with the atlas thing?" And she said he just loved just seeing where roads would lead. And sometimes he would just look at a globe. I don't have a therapist. What I have are motorcycles. I love riding motorcycles. And for me, when people ask me, "Where are you going today?" I don't know. I'm going to turn left. I'm going to turn right. I'm going to go straight. It doesn't matter. Wherever the road leads. I'm interested in seeing where roads lead, someplace brand new. I shared that with Steve and had no idea. He was interested in where roads led. I mean, that sounds like a Netflix original, Where Roads Lead, or at least a song, right? Or at least a book, Where Roads Lead. He was interested in where roads lead. One of the good ones. I feel so privileged to have worked with him. He was one of the good ones. He always put the needs of his students and his staff first. Steve made everyone feel important, and he knew how to make everyone laugh. That's one thing I can give testimony to. We never really had a whole lot of deep conversations about things. We were buddies, we were neighbors, but he always made me feel seen and heard and made me feel important, significant. Like I said, every time I saw him pull up in the driveway or every time I see him out of the corner of my eye in the yard, he would always pause and wave, make sure I saw him, or he would holler out my name and he would make sure that I answered back, "Hey, how's it going?" "Fine." And then that little chuckle, "Good to see you." And then, I don't know, he's off somewhere with the dogs, or he disappeared back in behind the fence, and I don't know, maybe he's back there feeding the koi or something. Who knows? But he had plenty to keep him busy. There will never be another one like him, Mr. Butler, all in caps. Your dad offered me a position at Big Walnut 20 years ago. And I think this is pretty sweet right here. I will forever be grateful because I loved my job and I loved working with him. He wasn't just my boss, he was my friend. I loved working with your dad, exclamation point. I loved him. He was so real all the time. So thankful for him and Linda. That's one thing too. Where you saw Steve, you saw Linda. You know, dynamic duo, joined at the hip. And one thing about that too, I don't know how opposite they were. I think they were a little bit opposite because, and this isn't a negative thing. I've seen Linda kind of come undone a little bit, not unhinged, but I've seen Linda a little, you know, at her wit's end. Steve, never. I think Steve was your counterpart, wasn't he? I think Steve balanced, brought some calm to the chaos. I can honestly say I never saw Steve shaken. I never saw Steve with a scowl on his face. I always saw Steve in a pleasant mood, smiling, always lighthearted, just a joy and a pleasure to be around. Linda, on the other hand, I'm joking. But he was such a wonderful and selfless person to work with. One last story, and then I'm going to kind of start wrapping things up here. But I thought this was sweet right here. Some of you may be familiar with this, some of you may not. I guess there was an ESL tutor at Big Walnut years ago. One day, Steve came to me as I was working with one of the students, and he asked if it was okay to bring another student who was less proficient in English so he could interpret the lesson and translate from Spanish to English. What he wanted to find out, I guess there was a situation on a bus. Little fella had a situation on a bus, so he wanted to find out what was going on. So one of his favorite memories remains watching Steve. I don't know what this guy's name is. Heather, you might know. Maybe after I finish the story. Watching Steve tell this little girl what questions to ask the boy so that he could find out what happened on the bus. It still remains one of my favorite memories, and I can still see the three of them working together to solve a problem. Linda and Steve often passed my house as they walked their huskies, and we always talked for a few minutes. Condolences to Linda and Steve's family. He will be missed. Yeah, what else? What else is there to say? I'm gonna ask a few of you if you would like to share some stories or memories. As a neighbor and as a friend, I only have a sliver, to share. I only knew him on that level. You are the ones who knew him deep and intimately and on a different level that I can't begin to share. But I do want to share a scripture, and I do want to share one other thing before I open it up to you, family and friends, if you would like to share something. There's a scripture. And it goes hand in hand with this rotary thing. Linda was telling me the rotary was very important to Steve, and he was instrumental in setting up the chapter in Sunbury. And there's four creeds or four mantras. The first, is it the truth? The second, is it fair for all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill, and will it build better friendships? And fourth, will it be beneficial to all consumed? I think this goes hand in hand with one of my favorite scriptures, and it's the fruit of the Spirit. Some of you are probably familiar with that. Maybe this is the first time you've heard of it. But the fruits of the Spirit, it's found in the New Testament. But the fruits of the Spirit are joy and long-suffering and forgiveness and happiness and patience. I think Steve exhibited all those characteristics. That's why people were so enamored with him. That's why people have so many positive things to say about him, because he embodied so many good qualities. So many good qualities. One thing, having been in the ministry and having, preached at churches and having done funeral services and wedding ceremonies, one of my favorite stories in the New Testament is about Jesus. You may have heard this. There was a time where the disciples were gathered around. Jesus was busy teaching, and all of a sudden a bunch of children started making some commotion and running around him, and the disciples got a little upset about that, and they started pushing the children away, and Jesus stopped them and said, no, let the children come to me. Let the children come. So the children gathered around Jesus. I mean, the mental image I get, they're jumping up on his lap, hanging from his arms. Jesus is smiling and laughing. The teaching can wait. We'll get back around to this. Let's spend some time with the children. Steve's career was built around children. He enjoyed the company of the children, and obviously children enjoyed his company. What a great testimony for him. There are, being a male, being a part of this species, I can tell you, patience sometimes is not our cup of tea. There's a reason that mothers, stay home to raise the children a lot. I don't know that some dads can take that. I personally loved being a part of raising my children and being that part of that puzzle. But I can tell from personal experience that some guys aren't cut out for that. Steve had that gentle spirit, that inviting, warm personality that he made a career. 20 plus. How long was he principal there? How long was he in education?
45 years.
Whoa, I was way off. Yeah, I was going to say 20. Whoa, 45 years spent in education. That in and of itself, that's medal worthy right there. Yeah, gold medal worthy. So, what a wonderful memory, and what a wonderful image to have that Steve left behind for you guys. So I hope a few of you are willing to share a few things. When I do this with people I don't know, it's often a risk. When you're in a room full of 30 or 40 people and you're like, hey, who wants to say something? Maybe that might not turn out too well. But I feel confident that with a small group like this, and especially just family and friends, that there are some stories that need to be shared. There are some things that we need to hear. Shed a little more light on, Steve's character and things that we would like to hear, things that would make our hearts smile at this time. So somebody wants to come up here. The streaming thing, we have to speak right into the mic. Don't feel like you need to do that if you want to sit or stand right where you are. But if you want to come on up so that everybody can hear.
I'm Mark. I'm Steve's brother. I brought this picture on purpose. This is my big brothers and me. And you see Steve is in the back, and he has his arms around Chris and I. And I think that picture, that's what he did his whole life. And he wrapped his arms around the people he loved, and he cared for them. That's why I brought that. The other ones I just thought were kind of interesting. The one picture there is at our grandmother's funeral. So I know what you guys are feeling. Growing up, my mom had 3 boys. And so that's lots of white socks and lots of tidy whities and lots of white t-shirts and et cetera, et cetera. And so she developed this system where all of Steve's clothes got a piece of red yarn. All of Chris's clothes got a piece of blue yarn, and all of my clothes got a piece of green yarn. And I think it's interesting that Steve ended up wearing a high state red his whole life. And I wore a military uniform, which mostly was green. And it's still, you look at the pictures of me in these things, I'm in green all the damn time. Mom did that to us. I think one of my favorite things about Steve was not in this picture, but in the pictures that came after. Both Chris and I ended up taller than Steve. And so, and you can see it in the one picture here where mom and dad are standing in front of us and the three of us are behind them. You know, Chris and I are 3 and 4 inches taller than Steve was. And in that picture, you can see he's got his hand and he's standing on it. Pictures over and over. You see Steve doing this, standing on his toes to be as tall as Chris and I. It was funny. But he was a role model and a mentor. He's a great big brother. Yeah, Jesus, he set the bar high. I'm telling you, as a kid, having him for an older brother, the Eagle Scout, the cheerleader playing the band, you know, can you do something wrong? But he was a great big brother, and I loved him an awful lot. In the last 10 years, you know, we have had that conversation, that phone call every Wednesday. And those guys are my best friends. My brothers have been my best friends. I'm so blessed. It was 50 years ago, next month, my grandfather died. And after he passed, we were cleaning out the house. I took 3 ties that he had worn. One of those ties is a skinny brown tie. And of all the ties I wore during my working career, I wore that tie more than any other tie, even more than my Air Force uniform tie. I wore that stupid skinny brown tie every chance I got. Still got it. In fact, before I came here, I rolled it in my fingers. For you guys. Find something that was Steve's. A hat, a sweatshirt, a pair of socks, and a tie. And hold on to it. Because when I rubbed that tie this afternoon, I can still feel my grandfather. And I still feel, I still get to be that little boy. Which never loved you. I love you guys.
I'll be always very thankful to you and that for celebrating my children. And these kids have never known the birthday that we have cupcakes or cake and some sort of big candle that opened up and spun around and did something. And it was always very special. They were never forgotten.
I was holding myself together pretty well until just then. But I did write something down about Dad, and I'm going to try and just stick to my script here so I can keep myself together, because I'm sure otherwise I'll get off track. But everybody here knew my dad one way or another, and everybody knew that he didn't look like a tough guy. But to me, he was the toughest guy that I know. He battled Crohn's disease his whole life with dignity, positivity, and grace. And I remembered this morning, as I was trying to come up with some things to say, that when I was little, I don't know, I was probably in like 5th or 6th grade, I wrote a school paper about how he was my hero for fighting the disease so hard. I know he loved us, and just like Kathy said, every time I talked with him on the phone, he would always ask me what Wyatt and Sam and JB were up to and how they were doing and what was new. So I think what I'm going to try and remember about him are some of the small things. Like every year, and I'm probably not the only one here who can say this, but every year on my birthday, he would call, and whether I picked up the phone or not, he would either sing me happy birthday or he'd leave me a message. And this last time, on June 26th, this year, I knew that he wasn't doing so well, so I actually saved that voicemail and I still have it. So that's one thing Mark can all hang on to. It's not a physical thing, but I'll hang on to that. Some other things I'll always remember, his perpetual whistling, which is a trait that both I and I think Andy too inherited from him. All three of us growing up, spending weekends at Indian Lake and going on family trips to Myrtle Beach. My dad and I, he was always kind of a cheap guy. Frugal is a nice way to say it. But the Reds used to have this thing where if you got good grades, they would give you tickets to Reds games. So that was my way when I was a kid to get to go to Reds games. So I remember one year we went to a game that was 19 innings long. And I don't know if that's a record for the Reds or not, but he knew I wanted to stay, so we stayed the whole time. And I think we got out of it like 2 a.m, probably by the time we left Cincinnati and headed back home. What else here? Obviously, I'm always going to remember and share some of our more recent talks that we had at the hospital and at Wesley Glen, taking him outside and how much he loved that, especially towards the end, and how much he loved hot, humid, sunny days like today. 100 degrees out, and he would still want to put on sweatpants and a sweatshirt and have a blanket draped over his shoulders to go outside. And I'm like dripping in sweat and just want to get back to the air conditioning, but there he is enjoying it. Another thing that I'll always remember is, growing up as a kid, especially when I was younger, we went to church quite a bit. And he was always very proud of his singing voice. I think this is something, but he would sing from the pews in a way that I can't really describe to you if you didn't see it, but it was very full of, I don't know, like gusto, or that's probably the best word for it. But he would sing. He had a pretty good voice. I mean, it's better than mine for sure. He was always singing a little bit too loud, but Heather and Andy, definitely, I can tell they know what I'm talking about. I remember that. So I would just ask that everybody here, obviously it's an emotional time for everybody in different ways, and we're here to mourn him, but I would also ask that everybody just take some time over the next few days, if they haven't already done that, and I'm sure most of you have, just recall ways that he was important to you, recall ways that he may have connected to you that were special to you. And I think as long as we keep those memories of Dad, that a little bit of him always will stay with us. So.
Okay. Bear with me. Don't do good at talking like this. So. Okay. I promise I will. I just wanted to say, one, Linda, I'm grateful I at least get to tell you. It makes me sad that I never got to tell Steve too. But obviously, going through divorce, you never know what kind of family you're going to gain. And I can honestly say that you guys made me feel like, just like Heather did, like one of your guys' own. Like, you guys cared about me so much. I'm so grateful for it, because I never felt any different than Kirsten or Jillian or anyone. And I just wish I could have told him that. And I also am so grateful that he is, I know, up in heaven now. And I just pray that one day I will also get to see him in heaven. And I think it's beautiful because, like, God never promises happiness or anything like that, but he does promise peace. And I think
one thing that we can all say about Pop Steve is that he gave everyone so much peace. He was so calm, so patient, like you had explained. And just being around him, you felt so comfortable and so just free to be whoever you wanted to be. And I think that's something that I am trying to aspire to be more like him every day. And I admire him for it. And wish I could have talked with him one last time, but I know one day we will hopefully do it again. So.
Wow, I wasn't going to stand up here again. It's funny, we keep hearing these words of hero, hero, hero. And I'm lucky that I did tell my dad that he was my hero. One of the last times I talked to him. So I know he knew that. He wasn't perfect. He wasn't perfect. Nobody is. He was a perfect dad for me. He always understood me, and he always listened to me, and he always cheered for me. And I'm a better person for it. I hope I'm a better mom for it. I hope I'm a better teacher for it. I'm so proud to walk around my school. This past couple of weeks has been hard, but part of that is because so many people have come up to tell me how much my dad meant to them. One of the things that Greg didn't read that was mentioned, and one of these was one of the teachers that he worked with. He actually hired this teacher, still a teacher there. He said, your dad taught me how to be not only a teacher, but a better man. I don't know very many people that you work for that you feel that way about. I had another teacher who came into my room. He's a big guy, teaching for a long time, and he said, your dad was my hero. Then I find that paper, local hero, just Matt saying that dad fought so hard for so long with Crohn's disease, and we saw him a lot of pain for a lot of years, and he just kept battling back. I think that's the part that was the hardest for us, was we thought he would do it again. So thank you all so much for coming and sharing in all this with us. We're just so thankful that you all loved him as much as we did, and we feel comfortable, I think, in this setting because we know that not everybody here. So thanks.
You may not have been able to say those words to him. I can almost guarantee he knew that. He knew that. He knew you loved him and cared for him. You know, we pick up on those vibes. All righty then. I'm a richer man for having known Steve, and I'll leave it at that. One other thing. We both loved music. You guys know he had an eclectic taste in music, so we're going to bow out of here listening to Jimmy Buffett, Bubbles Up. I don't know if you guys heard it. I heard it for the first time just a couple days ago, but what a happy, joyful little tune. So afterwards, everyone's invited over here to North High, right? Just a short walk over this way. Hope that you guys are able to be there, but what a wonderful group of family and friends. You know, I mean, the sadness and the tears are one thing, but doggone it, man, what a strong foundation to be able to stand on. You know, we all love you and care for you deeply, and we're here for you. And that goes for all you guys too. Linda, I know Linda's not the only one suffering, so we're all here for each other, right? You sure can.
One day you can't cry. So cry.
everybody was talking about how grandma was their hero, but he was like the biggest cheerleader. He went to every game, took me to every practice. He was always in the front of the bleachers. I remember the first year that I had him as my principal at Pee-wee. I went and saw him before my first class, and then I went and saw my aunt also that day, and then I got to see you after. But in between every break or recess or lunch, I had to take him to see him in his office. I'm just missing.
When this world stops reeling from that pressure drop feeling, we're just treading water each day. There's a way to feel better, be well set to weather the storms till the sun shines again. When your compass is spinning and you're lost on the way, like a leaf in the wind, friend, hear me when I say, bubbles up, they will point you towards home. No matter how deep or how far you go, they will show you the surface, the plot and the purpose. So when the journey gets long, just know that you are loved. There is light up above, and the joy is always in light. Bubbles up. To my friends who are jealous, when now and probably not, sometimes live and hurry. It's to share stories of love and of glory. It ain't half as bad as it's been. Sometimes living's a struggle, multiply, double, but they love it too much for the party to end. Bubbles up, they will point you towards home. No matter how deep or how far you go, they will show you the surface, the plot and the purpose. So when the journey is long, just know that you are loved. There's light up above, and joy there's always enough. Bubbles up, that's why I'm performing the rough and the right. It's a bright place today, and the sweet starry night. Bubbles up, they will point show you the surface, the plot and the purpose. So when the journey gets long, just know that you are loved as light up the road. And joy, there's always enough. Bubbles up.